California with a mild Mediterranean climate where we can grow crops year-round. We have our summer crops, which are warm season crops, and now we're growing our cool season or winter crops here in California. And we'll point out some of these that are growing now and will do well throughout the winter, even if we get a couple of light frosts. So rhubarb, of course, is growing right here in the front, is very lush and green, and is beautiful when the weather is cool and wet. We were lucky, we got our first winter rain just yesterday, so everything looks really happy. Next to the rhubarb is a summer crop that's a perennial that we can overwinter here in California, and this is our sweet bell peppers. What we'll do is they will continue to flower and bloom until we get a frost, and we're probably going to get a frost sometime in December, so in the next few weeks we're likely to get a frost. If we do, we can protect them and hold them over for next year by covering them with a cloth. We use agribon cloth, but even a sheet or a plastic. Standing in front here of some jungle kale. This is kale that we started last spring. So one of the tricks of a winter garden is knowing when to start your winter vegetables. And many of them that are producing now, like the kale and the cabbages and the broccoli, we actually started those in the midsummer, right in the heat of summer when you're not even thinking about a winter garden, is when you start a lot of your longer lived crucifers especially. So your kales, collards, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all of those, generally you start when it's still hot. So July, August, maybe as late as September. Transplant them into the garden. They take about 6 or 8 weeks until they're big enough to transplant into the garden. But then by now, as you're going into November and December and even into January, then that is when you really are producing the harvests from those crops that you started in the summer. But there's also plants you can start now that are very fast growing. The lettuces, the spinach, the green onions, carrots. A lot of those will germinate when the soil temperature is cold, even when it's as low as 40 degrees. Many of these seeds will still come up. If you're planting them now, many of these are not as slow growing as some of those crucifers, but it'll still be probably a couple months, so you're looking at January, February, where you'll be reaping the harvests from those crops you're planting today. Now, many people don't go to the trouble of starting their plants from seeds, but many of them we're still starting now and will transplant out into the winter garden. We're cutting back the perennials. So in this bed we have the rauram and mints. As they get into the winter season, they start to grow bare. We'll even get a little bit of mildew on them. When we see that, we cut it back, and then in just a few weeks they'll start resprouting and grow through the winter and spring. This is the very last of our summer squash, and you can see when the weather gets cold and the nights are wet, they'll get mildew, but until we actually have a frost, they will continue to flower and set fruits. Some really nice fruits right there. Broccoli, you wouldn't start from seed now, but you can still buy little seedlings of it that have already been started and transplanted into your garden, and it will set its buds from now into early spring. The entire plant is edible. You can eat the broccoli head, the flowers, as well as the leaves. This is a winter cover crop that probably most people are not familiar with, but this is fenugreek, or in India they call it methi. And you use it like a flavoring herb, like you would basil or parsley, as a fresh herb. It doesn't taste, in fact, it's a nitrogen-fixing legume, and has little trefoils or clover, so it's one of my favorites. So this is fenugreek. Delicious. When you cook with it, it imparts a maple syrup flavor. So you can add it to your rice or beans, or carrots or potatoes right at the end of your dish, or make a stew with it. Many people aren't familiar with the really nutritious qualities of fenugreek. It's wonderful for hormone balancing, and it's useful for men and women, but especially for young mothers who are trying to produce breast milk. Just a small amount of fenugreek will really prompt your body to produce delicious breast milk for your baby. These are Buscara red cabbages, and they're not quite headed up yet, but they're growing robustly. They love the cold weather and will even benefit from a light frost without any damage at all. So they're going to form nice round heads of a red cabbage. But much like many of the other crucifers, the broccoli, cauliflowers, and some of the others, even these outer leaves are edible. So if you're hungry and looking for a taste of cabbage, you can just take a leaf or two and use those in a dish. There's some gold beets and red beets in there. Fennel is coming up real nice right now. There's a few of these kohlrabis, these little azure star kohlrabis. Another winter crucifer. A patch of peas that are growing. They love the cold weather and they'll germinate in soil temperatures as low as 40 degrees. Now is the perfect time to plant them. This patch here was planted about a month ago, but it's not too late at all to plant your peas, and they'll continue to flower and set their pea pods until the weather warms in April. Another really quick and easy and very nutritious winter green is arugula. This one is called Santo arugula, and it's delicious in salads or steamed or used in all kinds of recipes. Our arugula here is more mature, and most people are familiar with eating it when it's just as a baby green, and that is because many of the baby greens and sprouts are more sweet. They don't develop as much of the stronger flavors. But as the plant matures, it produces more flavor, so it's more earthy, maybe a little peppery. Some people will detect some bitterness, which is also really healthy for you. But if you're sensitive to those tastes, then you can choose to grow it just as a sprout and eat it as a baby green. You got a taste today of what we have in the garden. We welcome every one of you to come out on the weekends and the afternoons to pick fresh and buy from our garden. And if you love videos like this and want to see more, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you.